Expectations for the final paper. As you'll notice, as the class winds down, the last few assignments are wrapping up, and really this is the final paper and the main assignment for the last week of class. There will be a final test in the last week, but within the last 2 weeks. This is going to be the capstone project for the class that brings a lot of what we've talked about together. If you'll notice on the content portion of your course, if you scroll down underneath the videos, the other videos that we posted, and the assignments in the content section, the article review assignments, you'll get to the bottom of the page and you'll see the cultural analysis project. Like I said, this is going to be built on a lot of the discussion boards we've already done. The Organizational Culture and Leadership book by Edgar Schein, so a lot of his content's going to be included in here, and you'll notice the terms will reflect the book and the terminology in that book, as well as the cultural analysis template that we use, the grid and the Excel workbook, Excel spreadsheet workbook that helped kind of format and formulate a lot of your thinking around these same topics. So use that, use what you already have, put this together in a paper format, and you'll be fine for the final project. Basically, I want you to start with an introduction, paragraph or two on the background of your company, and then get into a summary. I'd say, make the first paragraph at least, and you can format this as you see fit, but I'm looking for at least a paragraph on the background of your company, company that you're doing this analysis on. So tell me a little bit about, when it was founded, something, statistics, as well as the mission or the heart of the company. We'll get into a lot of these other things later on in the paper, but summarize the background, where the company's come from over the last few years. If it's a recent company, you can describe it as a startup. That's fine. There's still a background even for a company that's only been in existence for 2 days, because a lot goes into the formation of that organization. Then summarize. Use this introduction section, wait until you've written the rest of the paper to come back and kind of give a summary statement of what you found as part of your cultural analysis, the things that stood out to you. So I'd recommend saving the introduction or a portion of the introduction for after you've completed the paper. So move on in the formatting, and you'll see in the template that I provided you the evidence collected in cultural analysis section. The second section will be a lot of the things that you found when you begin analyzing your company or organization. Artifacts, physical objects, uniforms, language used, those types of upper level. If you look at the culture as an iceberg, artifacts are those things that reside above the surface. They're the things that the Titanic needs to take as an indication of something deeper, but watch out for, so that Leonardo DiCaprio and Rose don't end up in the water. So artifacts are the tip of the iceberg. The physical objects, another very direct, concrete manifestations of the culture. Beyond that, the espoused values, which again your grid will contain, things that people do talk about in very overt and external ways. So again, values are a step deeper than the artifacts, where maybe a mission statement could be an artifact, but the values that the mission statement is based on begin getting into how the organization actually operates. Common themes that you see in the way people treat each other or interact would start to get at the espoused values. Below that, the basic underlying assumptions are often unstated assumptions about reality, which you start looking at the way the book's formatted, and certainly the way you've addressed some of these topics already, you'll find that the assumptions aren't always even known by members of the organization. They're simply accepted as part of reality. And those are the things that are at the lowest level that give rise to the espoused values, and eventually takes form or shape in the artifacts. So you can see those connections. Also, letter D in section 2, subcultures. If there's a unique subculture, describe that. In some cases, the small organization will have a very uniform culture, but I think that it's also important to recognize that in almost any organization of more than a few people, again, you even get into 4 or 5 people, you're probably going to have somebody who's more responsible for some detail work, the accountants and engineers possibly, another person that's more involved in the marketing and strategy and external communication. They're going to have a different way of acting, a way of being around other people. people, and that's going to form a bit of a subculture. They're going to try and attract people that are like-minded and create their own little fiefdoms, silos, if you will. If you're looking at departments, this one silo is sales and marketing, another silo might be engineering or operations, and you can see how those subcultures differ, and how their unique differences might pose some problems, but not entirely. In some cases, it's necessary to have different groups operating differently. So we want to, I think, as you've read and certainly understand, it's not inherently wrong, or definitely not evil, to have different groups in your organization, but it's important to recognize those differences. Then get into the assumptions about external adaption and internal integration, letters E and F. I'll let you read up on those, but in one case you're dealing with the people and other organizations that are outside the boundaries of the organization. External adaption, how well do you adapt, and how flexible are you, how agile is your organization in response to the needs outside of the organization, customer needs and vendors and technological shifts, political, legal environment, those types of things, stakeholders, the community that we live and work in. Internal integration gets more to the heart of the matter when it comes to how a business conducts itself on a day-to-day basis. Begin kind of cataloging and analyzing that. And for any of these, it's one thing to state what it is, each item in this list, the espoused values, the underlying assumptions, but you can include some analysis as you go through this, and that's very helpful. That's what we're really looking for, is not just a statement of facts, and certainly not a bullet list, but an analysis of these issues. And then beyond that, the deeper cultural assumptions, which gets into time, possibly power distance, and those types of things, which we didn't talk about much, but if you find that some of these terms are relevant to your organization, you can bring those up as deeper cultural assumptions, as well as the effect of history, which kind of ties into the introduction, really, in the background of the company. What is the effect of the things that worked in the past that are institutionalized as the way it should be going forward, maintaining that status quo, and you can see the effect of history on a lot of organizations. Next section, get into the organizational assessment. I want you to talk about the stakeholders. Describe people who have an interest in your organization, who are affected by your organization, or have the ability to influence your organization. And again, this term is used a lot in business, a lot in leadership, a lot in organizational theory. It's good to be familiar with it. Again, the depth of our exploration of this term is short. We don't get to go into it as much as we'd like to, but certainly take a look at the stakeholders as best as you can to describe who are influenced by the organization. At the core, maybe owners, leadership, board of directors, managers, employees, and begin looking beyond that immediate range of internal actors and agents that are affected by the organization to the community and the media and other people that we interact with outside the boundaries of the organization. So that's what we're looking for in stakeholders. Customer is that specific group of people that the organization serves. Clients, possibly volunteers, more than likely people who are receiving the services if it's a nonprofit. Certainly, the types of customers, the primary types of customers that a business serves. Many businesses can serve a variety of customers, but what I'm looking for is, can you describe maybe the primary customer, the ideal customer, not one single group, but demographically, can you describe the type of person who would purchase products from this business? Mostly. Again, probably 80% of a customer base will have some similar characteristics, and then you'll have the outside range of differences. It might be good to recognize who they are as well. But I'm just looking for a description of customers, then the product. What is it that you provide your clients, your customers, the people that you serve? However you want to describe that as a good or service. Again, we didn't get to talk about this much. I think it's more of a marketing term that's often used, but when you think of products, don't just think of tangible goods, think of intangible services as well as ideas that you promote. In some cases, the products that you have are simply the ideas that you are sharing with other groups and other people and your customers, certainly. The organizational structure, just describe briefly, as you'll see here under letter D, the departments. Doesn't have to be exhaustive, but some of the departmental structure that you'll find within the groups and teams that are interacting within your organization. Describe the reporting structure if you can, between the hierarchy and levels of hierarchy within the organization. If it's a very flat organization, you can describe that relationship, how many layers of management there are or there are not. The fact that people are interacting with other groups mainly as peers and individuals mainly as peers, and that's a form of reporting structure, and the authority and responsibility that are delegated throughout the organization. Networks branches out into more informal relationships that span departments or other formal structural boundaries. So begin looking at networks. If you can describe that in some way, shape, or form, that's going to be helpful. Information sharing is a specific instance which we talked about, where people and groups share information. How well is that done? Again, we've already talked about that, but you'll want to incorporate that into this section on the organizational assessment. Stage in the life cycle is really just, is it a newer organization or an older organization? Again, that gets back to the effective history and rolls up into the background section for your introduction. Next, the mission and vision. I always describe mission, and again, we haven't had a chance to talk about this, but to the extent that it's helpful at this point, I'll share. I say mission is the reason for being, the purpose, and the reason why your organization exists. There's some great resources out there, and again, this is something that I like talking about in management and other classes, but it's good to think of mission as why you exist, and vision is where you're going. So to the extent that your organization expresses some of those ideas, you'll want to include that here in mission and vision. Normally it shows up as a mission statement, which can be helpful. Again, it doesn't have to capture everything of the organization, but it's usually indicative of how consistent the mission's communicated when you start talking to other people in the organization, if they get it, if they really buy into it and they can express the mission, maybe in their own terms, but within a few seconds they could describe, yeah, this is why we do what we do. This is why we're unique. This is what the world would miss if we weren't around. A strategy, again, to the extent that you can describe it, talk about the strategy. Some cases it's very explicitly stated. You and your organization, you may know, this is our plan. It could be documented. Sometimes formal strategy lacks the implementation and execution punch that strategies need. So if you want to describe strategy a little deeper than that, and to the extent that you've had other courses on strategy, I know in this lead program there's corporate finance and strategy as a significant class that gets into this, and I know some students haven't taken that class yet, so I'm not expecting you to be familiar with Richard Rumalt and Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, or Porter's 5 Forces, or anything like that. Really, I'm just looking for your description of strategy to the best of your ability in this section. And next, leadership, and again, that's a huge topic, but I just want to provide you with a section here where you can talk about how the leaders in the organization, both the maybe CEO or the president of the organization, as well as other more informal leaders throughout the organization, handle each of these areas of the business, from stakeholders, customers, projects, products, organizational structure, the mission and vision, and the strategy. Just describe leadership in that organization. Remember what Edgar Schein said: organizational culture and leadership are two sides of the same coin. Culture in any organization defines what good leadership looks like in that organization. I'll say that again. The culture of an organization will define what good leadership looks like in that organization. In a different organization, different leadership may emerge as the best kind of leadership, or this is our leadership. And you can see that in a variety of organizations. They define what leadership looks like. Likewise, leadership has the responsibility to create, manage, and possibly change culture. Instituting culture and caring for culture is one of the most important things that a leader does. So you want to take in consideration leadership, and then go through the findings and conclusions. I'm looking for effectiveness. How well does your organization accomplish its goals? Efficiency. How much waste is present as you're accomplishing your goals? How well do you use the resources you have as an organization? Describe the goals that you have, and you could actually flip-flop those if you want. You want to talk about goals before you get into effectiveness and efficiency. I'm fine with that, but I want to include those. You want to include those 3 things in your findings and conclusion section. possible changes. And again, don't get into much here, but just because the change course in the LEAD program will focus on organizational change and communicating change and change leadership, but it's something that we talk about in this course, so I want to provide you with a section here, possibly a paragraph, to describe some potential changes that you see needing to take place in the organization. And I recognize very much that because you identify these cultural deficiencies, possibly cultural hypocrisy, and by that I just mean sometimes the espoused values and the artifacts don't match up with the basic assumptions. I don't think this is unusual. In fact, this happens all the time. An organization might say one thing, but do something that contradicts it. It's cultural hypocrisy. There's a lot of it out there. Again, I don't sit there as holier than thou, pointing the finger at people, telling you or anyone else how wrong it is, but it happens. So the fact that there's inconsistency is simply a way of recognizing that sometimes organizations say one thing, but do something entirely different. But you want to look at those changes, and I would say don't go off the beaten path and try and implement those changes yourself, because that's the responsibility of leadership. And to the extent that you are in charge of an organization, maybe you can address some of these things. But in other cases, culture is a very difficult thing to change. In many cases, it's so deeply rooted in the organization that it takes a significant move to make those changes, and it can disrupt a lot of the good that's being done in an organization. At the cost of those good things, you might make those smaller changes, and you have to weigh that as you consider what changes are out there. But it's good to recognize what you would change if you could. Then learning opportunities in the organization. What can you learn? What can your organization learn as you grow? And future prospects. Just give a brief summary statement in this conclusion, trying to wrap it up with some ideas of where the organization's going in the future, what challenges you face, what opportunities are out there, and where you think the organization might be in a couple years. You don't have to get out your crystal ball and look too deeply in the future, but I want you to at least think about where you're going. And with that, I thank you for being a part of our course. I hope the wind and the leaves weren't too much of a distraction here, but I'm decided to do this outside. So I hope to meet you someday, hopefully soon. And in the meantime, good job with the course. Enjoy your summer. Thanks again for all of your participation and contributions.